Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. The current SMG meta is honestly insanely competitive because of the various adjustments that we've seen to a bunch of different SMGs over the course of season 3 and season 3 reloaded. We've got one of the most wide open SMG metas we've had in Warzone in quite some time. But that said, today I wanted to go through and try my best to break down the definitive top 5 best SMGs and of course go through the best setups for all of them. So first things first, we got to break down what are the 5 best SMGs. So to do so, to help out a little bit, we are here on True Game Data taking a look at some stats, and we've got a list of 9 honestly fantastic subs. You could use every single one of these and find success with them in one way or another. But we got the C9, the HRM9 I've seen a lot of talk about because of some of the buffs that it got, the Jackal, the KSV, the Kompakt, the Ladra, the MX9, which we've talked about a good bit already about, the PPSH, and the SAUG. You know, if we could add more than 9 here, there's probably a few others we could add into this list as well. But that said, we go through, we look at 300 health and a combination shot TTK. You can see, like, this graph, there's not really any specific point where there is a massive gap when it comes to the best of the best here, right? So this is an insanely competitive meta, but we got to knock this list of 9 down to 5. First up, I think a little bit more of an obvious one, like the only real obvious choice here is that the HRM9 still is just not as versatile as any other option here. In its first damage range, that first 10 meters, it ends up being one of the slower options. Then it's also got the earliest and most harsh drop off here. So that orange line, our HRM is just not going to be able to compete with the other options. Then we're really just like, obviously this is a 40-meter graph. You're not really using a sub realistically beyond 25-30 meters. Like if you really want it to be good, you're fighting 10, 15, 20 meters max with it, right? That's really where the vast majority of the ideal fights are going to be taken with these style of weapons. So that first damage range, again, you're looking at some things. This Jackal, surprisingly enough, is still not phenomenal. It's really competitive, but it's not top 5 worthy. You can see in first damage range now, slowest TTK there. Its second damage range, second slowest TTK. So the Jackal, while it's still good, like you could use it, you'll do okay with it, there's a lot of options that can beat it out. Then we look towards the next slowest TTK in that first damage range. It's actually the KSV, which is unfortunate because in the mid range, this thing's actually really good. It's one of the better options, but you're still losing those first 12 meters potentially, depending on which attachments you have on other subs, what the ranges end up being there, right? By a decent bit, especially compared to some of the fastest TTK choices. You're looking at a 600 on the KSV at 10 meters versus the Kompakt, the Ladra, 550, 560. There will be some noticeable differences there. So the KSV, again, while it's super close, you could consider it maybe the number 6, the number 7 sub. I don't think it fully falls into that top 5. Then we're down to 6 here, and the competition only gets more competitive, right? I think there's a few we can fully agree are gonna be in the top 5. The C9, versatility, it's good throughout. The Kompakt, while having that fastest drop off there and then the slowest TTK in the second range, it's also pretty easy to use. In that first range, TTK is technically the best in the game. I feel like that's gotta be a mainstay, right? The Ladra, second fastest in the first range, really good in the second range. The MX9, third fastest, fourth fastest, third here if you're looking at 10 meters exactly in the first range, really good, the best in the second range. The PPSH is where I lean a little bit to drop out of that top 5. It's very good in that first damage range, and it's decent enough in that second damage range, but it by far has the worst feel out of all these just because of the iron sight, like muzzle smoke and muzzle flash, the damage per mag being a little bit iffy. It's just a little bit more awkward than these other options, so I think it just barely misses the top 5 as well. But that said, we then have 5 fantastic SMGs: the SAUG, the MX9, the Ladra, the Kompakt, the C9. Now let's go through, let's rank these 1 to 5 and break down the best setup for each of these. As we do so, if you enjoy the video, you find the information helpful, a like rating is always seriously appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, you want to guarantee that each and every single day you're in the know for everything going on in COD, no better place than right here. So feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. So jumping into the list now, first up, number 5, I've got the SAUG. I really love how this gun feels. Its mobility, its controls a little bit weird, but it's still perfectly manageable. Really good range, good TTK, as we obviously saw in the graph there. This thing's a very fun SMG, and really up until this point, unlike a lot of the other options on this list, hasn't been super useful up until the point in season 3 where it got buffed, and it's maintained its ability to be a top sub throughout season 3 reloaded as well. well. So here, a bit of a unique setup. First up, I do just go for the long barrel. Pretty much rock this on every single SMG because velocity doesn't matter in 15-20 meter fights. Like, all the SMG velocities are going to be sustainable for that. What does matter is damage range, extending out that first damage range primarily nearly out to a 14 meter effective damage range on this one. Ranger foregrip, better horizontal control so the weapon's easier to predict, and better sprinting movement speed. That's a win-win for an aggressive weapon like this. Extended 2 is going to be a 55 with a 909 RPM. The DPM is not going to be the greatest in the world, but it's sufficient. It'll work in solos, duos, trios, quads. Commando rear grip for the better ADS and sprint to fire on there, just making this gun even more aggressive. 195 ADS, 115 sprint to fire is going to be pretty standard there. And then recoil springs. Why not get some free recoil horizontally and vertically and make the gun even easier? Like I said, real big fan of how the SAUG feels. And number 4, I've got the MX9. Only reason this isn't a little bit higher is because ultimately it's not a Black Ops 6 gun. While the damage, the range, the TTK is fantastic as we saw, its overall feel is still a little bit noticeably different than Black Ops 6 guns. There's just a smoothness to Black Ops 6 guns that MW2 and MW3 options don't quite have yet, but it's not the worst thing in the world. You can still use this, and as soon as you just get comfortable with it, as you start to use it more and more and get more familiar with it, you're good. Yes, it's going to feel different, but that doesn't stop it from being a really good option, right? So here, not a huge fan of the irons. I do go for a Night Owl model 2023 personally. There's a different optic you like to use more, or if you're okay with the irons, go ahead, rock those, or rock a different optic if that makes you more accurate there. Any suppressor is going to do the exact same thing here, basically extending out our damage and our range. And then I also go for the S901 barrel, which helps out even more with some range there and some movement speed too. So kind of the best of both worlds. We end up with the 14 meter effective damage range. 638 velocity is really good for a sub. So like in the mid range, this thing's going to feel like it hits really well. Just a basic extended mag here. It's a 50 rounder. That'll get the job done. Then I go for the C11 riser, helps out with sprint to fire and ADS. ADS is 199, but our sprint to fire 93. Really aggressive build here. Like I said, different feel than BO6 guns, but still plenty usable and really good when you land your shots. Next up at number 3, I've got the Kompakt. Really, if this thing had a slightly better damage range, and it's a little bit strange with how you have to set this thing up, in my opinion, to make it optimized, it would be the best sub, because obviously that first range TTK is insane, but it does drop off a little bit more noticeably than some of the other options we've got here, but still insanely good TTK up close. If you can just run and gun with this thing, you are going to fry. So really what matters here, because the rate of fire is so crazy, is accuracy. You have to hit as many shots as you can. If you're missing, that TTK will plummet, and of course you're gonna have to reload sooner as well. So that's why I go for the compensator. Straight up better vertical control, Ranger foregrip, better horizontal and better sprinting movement speed, and recoil springs on here as well. So this is the max recoil control build. Basically, you could swap in the vertical under barrel if you wanted to, but I feel like that added movement speed there still pretty important on an SMG, but that's just going to be dependent on how comfortable you are with this gun. You obviously need extended 3 here, which is a 60 rounder. Even with that, 1091 RPM means you're gonna just burn through ammo, right? So the DPM is gonna be iffy, but if you hit your shots, you'll be okay. Now, I personally would love to have a quick draw rear grip on here. That's what I rock myself for the better ADS speed, down to a 160. Sprint to fire is going to be 155, so it's a little bit slower there. The problem is, even with Commando, you're sitting at a 200 ADS, a 131 sprint to fire, and you don't get better range out of adding in a long barrel, which would be ideal, extending that out to almost 13 meters. This really is a weapon that I feel like Gunfighter is really good on. So you can have long barrel on there. So you could have an infiltrator stock or a balanced stock on there. You could even go ahead and put on a Strelok laser as well for like the little hip fire ADS cheese that's going on there. Really, 5 attachments typically does it for SMGs. This is one though that I feel like could benefit from those 3 extra attachments. Then at number 2, we've got the brand new Ladra. I've been loving this thing since it dropped. It's by far been my most used SMG since the season 3 reloaded update, and it dropped with the event. It just feels fantastic. It is super aggressive, really easy to use. Kind of reminds me a little bit like the Mac 10 from Warzone 1. It really feels and looks and plays more like a Spectre from Black Ops 1, but in a Warzone comparison, it's that high fire rate, low recoil, good range SMG. That's kind of what the Mac 10 was back in the day, right? So here again, rocking the long barrel, extends our damage range out to over 15 meters. That's fantastic. Ranger foregrip for the mobility and control there. Extended 2 is going to be a 66 rounder in this case with a 1071 RPM. A little bit more of a safety net than what you have on the Kompakt, which is nice. I really like quick draw rear grip here for the faster ADS, sitting at a 151. Sprint to fire is 135, which is solid there. Commando would also be a good option though for what it's worth. And then I also really like the infiltrator stock on here too for that better strafe speed. I messed around with a compensator on here, recoil springs. That's always good. If you need more control, you could absolutely swap this out for one of those, but I feel like this weapon's pretty easy to use, especially in the close range. And with this, it's got great mobility and it's kind of just checking all the right boxes. And then lastly here at number 1, I've got the C9. Ever since this got buffed last, it's just back to being the most reliable SMG. Doesn't matter if you're fighting at 5, 10, 15, 20 meters. It's going to be easy to use, super aggressive, have a great TTK. There's really nothing this thing does poorly, right? It's doing everything at a very, very high level. So in my opinion, this is the clear #1 choice, as good as all the other subs are that we've talked about in this video. So first up, again, rocking that long barrel, 15.5 meter effective damage range, Ranger foregrip yet again, same reasons as before. Extended 2 in this case, 50 rounder, it'll get the job done. Only a 732 RPM by comparison, so the DPM is going to be just fine here. I really like the ergonomic rear grip here. I do a lot of slide canceling up close, and getting that better slide to fire speed on this gun in particular just feels fantastic, plus the better ADS speed as well. But that said, commando is always a good choice. Quick draw is always a good choice as well. If you want to switch to one of those, you prefer the feel of those more. And then lastly, I've sort of gone over to recoil springs lately just to get some horizontal and some vertical. It's mostly a pretty easy gun to use. This just makes it a laser beam, in my opinion, makes it super predictable. You could also just rock a base compensator to get max vertical control if you wanted to. Don't really feel a need for a monolithic or anything here. It's going to slow you down a bit too much. Or if you just really want to stay off the map, a base suppressor instead, if you're comfortable with the control, is always a viable option too. But that being said, that is going to wrap things up for this one. Those are the top 5 best SMG loadouts to be rocking right now. If you of course enjoyed the video, a like rating is always really appreciated, and if you're new to the channel, you want to make sure you're always in the know for everything going on in COD, feel free to hit that subscribe button on your way out. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.